Bristol, Tennessee City Council to order now. Remind all of you that we'll have an opportunity for you to speak here in just a little while on anything that's on the agenda. If there's anything that's not on the agenda, we'll call for citizen comments here in just a little bit, and you'll have an opportunity to speak on those matters that are not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, if you'll just wait till it comes up, and then we'll call on you and let you speak your mind then. We appreciate everybody being in attendance this evening. We've got some special guests here this evening. We've got Boy Scout Troop 108. And the young men who are going to be doing the Pledge of Allegiance this evening: Chase Brown, Jonathan Bailey, Joel Bailey, Josiah Carrier, Micah Carrier, and Aaron Webb. And along with them, there are their Scoutmasters this evening: Ray Brown, Dave Bailey, and Scoutmaster Wiley Webb is actually going to be the person giving our invocation this evening. I'll remind all of you, if you've got your cell phones, make sure you turn them off or put them on buzzer. And with that, folks, if you'll rise with me for the invocation, and we'll call Mr. Webb to come forward.
Pray with me. Lord God, we praise you and adore you and lift your name up. And Father, we thank you for taking care of us, for being concerned with us. And Father, we know that we have done things wrongly in deed or action or word. We pray for your forgiveness. And Lord, we pray that you will bless the city council meeting. Pray that you'll bless each of the city council members. Pray that you will give them wisdom, knowledge, and discernment to make the best decisions they can for the city. Bless Jeff Broughton as he leads, and guide him, and pray that you will guide him and direct him in every way. We thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for your love. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jim. That's a fine-looking group of young men, and we really appreciate them. Appreciate y'all being with us this evening. Ms. Terry, I think we need to call the roll.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes, here.
Councilwoman Feierabend?
Here.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve?
Here.
Councilman Sandy?
Here. Thank you, Terry. Ms. Broughton, do we have any additions or deletions from the agenda this evening?
No, the agenda is distributed, is complete and ready for action this evening with no additions.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. First up then, first order of business is proclamations and recognitions. And this evening, our first proclamation is one directed towards Burwell Construction on their 50th anniversary. And Councilwoman Margaret Feierabend is going to read that. And we have Bill Burris and Bill Prince here to receive that this evening.
And after I read it, if y'all want to come over there, and you'll have opportunity to say a few words as well. So. Whereas Burwell Construction Company was founded in 1962 by William Tilley Jr. and William Burris Sr. and is now commencing its 50th year of operation as a general contractor in Bristol, Tennessee, Virginia. And whereas Mr. Burris Sr. purchased Mr. Tilley's interest in the company in 1965, and the company is currently owned by the Burris and Prince families under the direction of Chairman and CEO William C. Burris Jr. and William H. Prince Sr. its President and Chief Operating Officer. And whereas the company has received numerous awards for its work, including the 2012 Project of the Year for the Alpha Natural Resources Corporate Headquarters and 2010 Project of the Year for Fairmount Elementary School. And whereas the company motto, "Using today's technology to build tomorrow's landmarks," is evident in a number of signature buildings around town, including the Bristol Public Library, Bristol Train Station, Fairmount Elementary School, and the Old Custom House, to name but a few. And whereas the company serves the southeastern United States from its headquarters at 620 Locust Street in Bristol, Tennessee, with projects in Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky, West Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Florida, and Texas. Now, therefore, David Shoemaker, Mayor of the City of Bristol, Tennessee, does hereby congratulate Burwell Construction Company on 50 successful years of operation in Bristol and extends best wishes for continued business in the future. Done this first day of May, 2012.
I'd like to thank the City Council for this recognition, and my only thought is I've been with the company 46 of the 50 years, gone a little bit for the Army service and college, but the real merit here, or the person that needs to be recognized, is my father, who had the foresight and the willingness to take that first step, to take that risk to start this company. And my only regret is he's not here tonight to appreciate and be a part of this. We thank you so much.
I'd like to thank City Council also. I've been with Burwell for 30 years now. And like Bill said, Mr. B, as we called him, was a great gentleman who started this company and has allowed us to continue it and to be here and be successful in Bristol and be a part of Bristol, and to have a lot of families come to Bristol. Real proud of the people and our staff that we have, bringing a lot of young people back to the city. It's one of the things we're very proud of, but proud to be a part of Bristol, and we thank you very much.
Our next proclamation is Emergency Medical Services Week, and Council Vice Mayor Joel Staton is going to read that proclamation.
Who's going to accept it?
I'm sorry. Lieutenant Jeff Henry from our fire department is here to accept that.
A proclamation designating May 20th, 2012 as Emergency Medical Services Week. Whereas emergency medical services are a vital public service, and whereas the members of emergency medical services teams are ready to provide life-saving care to those in need 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And whereas access to quality emergency care dramatically improves the survival and recovery rate of those who experience sudden illness or injury. And whereas the emergency medical services system consists of emergency physicians, emergency nurses, emergency medical technicians, paramedics, firefighters, emergency medical dispatchers, educators, police officers, administrators, and others. And whereas the members of emergency medical services team, whether career or volunteer, engage in thousands of hours of specialized training and continuing education to enhance their life-saving skills. And whereas it is appropriate to recognize the value and the accomplishments of emergency medical services providers by designating Emergency Medical Service Week. Now, therefore, David Shoemaker, Mayor of the City of Bristol, Tennessee, in recognition of this event, does hereby proclaim the week of May 20th through 26, 2012 as Emergency Medical Services Week, with the theme, EMS, More Than a Job, a Calling. And I encourage the community to observe this week with appropriate programs, ceremonies, and activities. this first day of May 2012. Signed, David Shoemaker, Mayor.
The Bristol, Tennessee Fire Department would like to thank the support of the City of Bristol and City Manager, Mr. Broughton. We want to invite everybody out to see us at Anderson Park on May the 19th from 9 to 1 for our open house ceremonies that we're having out there. Thank you.
Next up, we have presentations. We've got Traffic Safety Ambassador Program, and I believe, Blaine Wade, are you going to do the honors?
This year is our 6th year that we're marking for our Traffic Safety Ambassador Program, and as you well know, it's a key educational component of our overall highway safety program, which in the last few years we've won first place in the state of Tennessee with using this one component along with our enforcement and engineering program. And we're very glad to be able to partner with the school system to get these representatives to help us educate the public with traffic safety. And tonight I brought Captain Matt Austin, who will explain a little further and announce the awards.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight to share with you one of our programs with traffic safety. With this program, we tried to look for a program that could reach out and touch all facets of our community. And with this program, we partnered with the school system also to work with the young people in the schools that they would make a poster that would highlight traffic safety. And what they've done with these posters is that they've come up with all kinds of different ideas about traffic safety, from not driving and putting on makeup to not texting and driving to not drinking and driving. They've come up with all sorts of different ideas about traffic safety. So with that partnership, we've also, by using the kids and when they develop these posters, they'll be talking with their families. So we're able to touch the youngest, most inexperienced drivers, and also with their partnership with their families to be able to highlight traffic safety also with our most senior or experienced drivers as well on the road. So with this program along with others has been very successful with us in being able to reduce the amount of traffic accidents on our roadways, to keep our roadways as safe as possible, that we're proud that with these types of partnerships that we've been in the last 5 years been able to reduce the number of traffic crashes within the city by 20%. So with that, I am absolutely proud this year to partner with our ambassadors this year, that during this time throughout the year, we partner with them as they're available on different programs that we do with the state as well, with the Hands Across the Border campaigns, the Ticket and Click It, the 100 Days of Summer Heat, all of those different programs with the state. But this program puts on, what we tried to do is take a local hometown face to put on traffic safety, and this program, along with others, has proven very successful. So it is my honor to partner with the second place poster this year, Lily Perkins. And then this year's first place poster, Lakin Carrier.
Let's give both these young ladies another round of applause. Thank you, Captain Austin and Chief Wade. We appreciate you. How long's that program been going on? Captain Austin, you've been doing this several years now. That's wonderful. 20% decrease. That's wonderful. Thank you. Next up on our agenda is public hearings, and we have one public hearing this evening. Mr. Broughton, if you'll tell us about that.
I'll be happy to. The public hearing tonight is on the city's community development action plan, community development block grant action plan for the period of 2012 to 2013. And this is something the council has reviewed, not just recently when we reviewed the budget in work session last month. This is a requirement that the city goes through each and every year to compete and receive block grant funds from the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The CDB action plan identifies this year, in this case, the use of our entitlement block grant money, which is will come in at $156,456, and with program income and carryover funds, we have a total of $193,456 available. The activities that are budgeted this year include our housing reconstruction, rehab, and emergency housing programs, which is about $103,000 of the total. Funding again for the YWCA's daycare center, a total of $23,000 in CDBG monies is planned for that activity to be supplemented with general fund money. I believe in Bristol is also scheduled to be a recipient this year in the amount of $22,500. And of course, that amount will be supplemented with additional general fund monies. And there's an additional $14,000 for demolition and clearance of blighted on a spot blight area basis. In addition to that, as always, monies are available to support the administrative side of running that program. This year, as in the past, the monies that come to us from the federal government allow us to move in a direction to address housing needs that we would not be able to do without such funds. And so by continuing to move forward with the necessary public hearing this evening regarding the proposed use of these funds, and then the submission of the application, which takes place under the consent agenda for the monies identified, will allow us to continue to provide those needed services in this community. So with that, Mr. Mayor, be appropriate to seek public comment on the proposed Community Development Action Plan for 2012-2013.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. I'll open up the public hearing on this particular item. This will be the only opportunity that you'll have to speak to this particular item at this point during the public hearing. When we get to the vote later, you won't have an opportunity to speak. Is there anyone in attendance wishes to speak to this particular item? Seeing none, we'll move right along. Thank you. Close the public hearing, go right on with our council meeting. We've got up next is an opportunity for individuals to speak on any matter that is not on the agenda. And I think we do have a couple folks in attendance this evening. When you come to the podium, if you will introduce yourself and so that we can get it in the record who you are and where you live, and we'll go right on. And if you would, please keep your comments short. Just a little bit
Pull
more.
it down a little bit. There you go.
Just a little bit louder.
A little bit like.
Do I need
just
to
a
have you
little bit
turn this
louder.
up?
There you go.
There we go.
There you go. That's good.
Okay, I'm Diane Whitaker. I live at 1628 6th Street Extension. I've given each of you a copy of exactly what I'm saying for your convenience. There are also 5 attachments that are directly relevant to the presentation. I have owned and paid taxes on the same house on 6th Street for more than 25 years. I have problems with the adults at 1739, 1741, and 1802 who choose to flagrantly violate the law and allow their dogs to run at large. 2 of these dogs are aggressive and dangerous, and the third leaves deposits in my yard. The most egregious issues, however, are with the irresponsible adults at 1739 who allow 1 or 2 pit bulls to run at large and are also verbally and physically aggressive, abusive, and offensive themselves. I have now seen one or both dogs from 1739 running at large on 8 separate occasions, all of which have been properly documented and reported to our police department. During 6 of those 8 times, the dog or dogs were directly threatening me on my own property. Of the 2 times that one or both dogs were on the public street, which is not safe for public use, one of these occurred recently, in fact, Monday, April 23rd, just a few days ago, when I actually witnessed with the dog run off its property at 1739 onto the street and threaten a shocked man walking down the street, what should be a safe public street. I saw for myself on Monday, April 23rd, that my public street is still too dangerous for public use. I have been too afraid to walk on it for many months now and have gone from a size 8 to a size 14 because I cannot walk on my own public street to exercise. It's too dangerous for the public. I myself was then terrified when this same vicious dog came racing across the street to threaten or attack me this past Wednesday, April 25th. He was, in fact, the same vicious, aggressive dog that I had seen on Monday, except this time he ran across the road and onto my own property to threaten me with severe bodily harm in front of 6 eyewitnesses. Both my street and my own yard are unsafe because the dog or dogs are neither tethered nor under voice control, which are the legal requirements for dogs being in public places. Both times in the Monday and Wednesday incidents, I heard Carla, that's the lady at 1739, yelling at the dog to stop, and the large aggressive dog did not even break his pace, much less stop and return to her. In fact, the dog was totally unresponsive and completely oblivious to Carla's voice commands. Both my street and my very own private property on which I pay taxes consistently are absolutely unsafe and are in fact extremely dangerous. The people themselves are also a problem, as they have in the past chosen to verbally and physically threaten and intimidate me. I am a small female who is unarmed. I am no match for 2 rough, out-of-control screaming women and 2 out-of-control shouting, threatening, and intimidating men. I am just one little person, and I am a prisoner in my own home. And that's not right. Our tax money is supposed to be used to protect us, and I am unable to secure the oft-requested protection from our police department that would be afforded me by patrolling police cars and animal control trucks. Ladies and gentlemen, it's not right. I emailed you, all 5 council members, with my 10 very reasonable requests last Friday. I appreciate your taking the time to read those. For the sake of time, I've condensed these requests for the record. My requests are as follows. Number 1, police and animal control patrols on average every 15 minutes down my street. This is entirely reasonable and doable because of my immediate proximity to the Volunteer Parkway and the total ease of detouring down my street as officers go on calls and travel to the police station. I see them travel up and down the Volunteer Parkway. They could so easily take a shortcut. Number 2, access to public records. Just as I used to have and other citizens now have, this is so obvious I don't need to comment further. Number 3, copy of records about what happened at 1739, the night someone drew blood. Yes, that is the kind of people with whom I'm dealing. There should be public records if the investigation is complete. Number 4, I have met many fine officers on the Bristol, Tennessee Police Force during this ongoing ordeal. I don't have this on here, but Officer Steele is probably the most outstanding one. He's responded to a number one, and he's a white knight. He's great. Unfortunately, I've also encountered a sergeant, an armed man wearing a badge of authority who bullied me. I am a small and unarmed and unresisting Christian lady. He should never have been at my home intimidating me at all, since he had invented a law that I now know does not even exist and was trying to force me to obey this law he created. I ask that he be officially reprimanded and retrained, if not fired, not to bully small, unarmed, passive female citizens through verbal and physical aggression, and not to make up his own laws and then attempt to enforce them as he did that night. In fact, all officers should be quizzed to be sure they even know what the laws are that they're sworn to uphold and enforce. How can they enforce them if they don't know what they are? And all officers should be admonished not to feel free to create their own laws. While this seems so blatantly obvious to me, apparently it's not obvious to others, or that incident with that sergeant at my house that night would never have occurred. Number 5, specific directions from whomever the council chooses to explain to me about what I need to do about what is now shorter term but still illegal parking at 1739, which partially blocks my driveway and impedes traffic flow. When a car is parked legally on one side and they choose to park illegally on the other side, that 2-lane traffic is now reduced to 6 to 7 feet. I don't have to explain to you why that's a problem. Number 6, repeatedly remind the officers to actually issue citations when they see cars and trucks parked illegally in front of 1739 and 1741, rather than just asking them to move the cars, because this doesn't even faze these callous people. Number 7, explain to me how to protect myself from overt verbal and physical aggression by the 3 adults from 1739 and the male adult at 1741. Number 8, have you assure me that all officers patrolling my street have received instruction about how to intervene to prevent dog-related tragedies. In the packet I gave you tonight is the story of the ex-fire chief, a former Vietnam veteran, by the way, an ex-boxer, whose life was saved by a police officer who just happened to be patrolling near where this large and fit man, now remember I'm a small woman, was facing death from being torn apart by 2 pit bulls. And the officer reacted quickly by ramming one of the pit bulls with his police car and by shooting the other pit bull to save this man's life as the man lay on the ground being mauled by 2 ferocious pit bulls, just as the one I've had to face are. Number 9, in light of the 2 recent incidents last Monday and Wednesday that I've described to you, I ask that this vicious dog or dogs, I'm not sure how many, at 1739 now be declared as dangerous or at least potentially dangerous dogs. How could they be considered otherwise? They are like guns that keep going off in the hands of their careless owners. Thank you for listening. I ask that you act on these 9 requests immediately as my life and limbs depend on it. Bless you.
Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. As you and I spoke before the meeting, we have a meeting set up for Friday morning in City Manager's office with you, Mr. Broughton, myself, and someone from the police department. Thank you, Ms. Whitaker. Who's next? Anyone else wish to speak to City Council on any matter this evening that is not on the agenda? And if you'll state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Angie Bradnan, and I live at 202 East State Street. And apparently the whole place is going to the dogs because I was here a couple of months ago to complain about the speeders on State Street because I have an elderly dog that I cross the street to walk in the cemetery. And in the just over 2 months since I've been here, after I left, I spoke to Mayor Shoemaker, and I also spoke to McDaniels, isn't that?
Oh, Tommy McDaniels.
Yes,
Right,
yes,
Officer
Tommy, I was calling Tommy. His, Officer McDaniels, Chief McDaniels, he came by, talked to me. They assured me that they were going to do something about the speeders. They were going to run some patrols. In the more than 2 months since I've been here, I have seen 2 policemen. Now, I understand I work, so I'm not always there, but I've checked with my neighbors. None of them have seen the policeman. There were 2 gentlemen that were always mowing the lawn, basically all day long over at the cemetery. I asked them. They have not seen anyone. I can tell you that the speeders on State Street have not slowed down. There was one policeman one day. I happened to get off work early, and I went down and spoke to him, and he told me that he had handed out 13 tickets in 3 hours, and this was not even prime drive time, but that he had handed out 13 tickets in 3 hours, and that he didn't even start handing out tickets until they were moving at a rate of 36 miles an hour. I'm just going to tell you that when you are in the middle of the lane and you have a car that crests over one of those hills at 36 miles an hour, they come up on you very fast. If someone were to be looking down, turning the radio, doing anything, that would be enough for them to be on top of someone. So I am going to continue to come to the city council, and I am going to complain about this until you either choose to do something or until someone gets hurt, because I will remind you that in this same area that we've discussed, which is basically my area of reference that I'm concerned about, is the light down there at Georgia, when you're coming off there down to the bottom of the hill by Sweet Treats. That, for me, I mean, I'm sure they're speeding other places on State Street, but for me, that's the problem. So I wanted to remind you again that you have two of your most vulnerable demographics that are coming either across the street or pulling out. You have children every day crossing that street to go to the basketball court. You also have your senior citizens pulling out in that same little area. So I'm going to continue to come here and complain until you choose to either do something about the problem or until someone gets hurt and they sue the city, and they will have a well-established trail that the city and the police department is well aware that there's a problem there, because there is a serious problem, and really something needs to be done about it because it's just unsafe. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Broughton, if we could get maybe a printout of some of those things that have been done, and maybe we could get together and report back to her about what we're doing. Thanks. Moving on then to, before we move on, anyone else? Is there anyone else wish to speak to council about something that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on then to appointments. We've got several boards and commissions that we have appointments to this evening. The first up is Community Development Advisory Committee. Mr. Broughton, if you'll tell us about that.
Yes, you have one position to fill on the Community Development Advisory Committee, and the role of that committee is to assist our Department of Community Development in the implementation of projects using federal housing money, such as the CDBG program monies that we talked about in our public hearing. You have one candidate for that position this evening, and that's Glenn Moore, Jr.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Is there anyone wish to speak on behalf of Mr. Moore besides me? Anyone on council wish to speak on Mr. Moore's behalf? I'll just say I've known Glenn Moore for many, many years. He's been active in the community, wonderful person who's retired now and got time to spend some of it in service to his city, and we appreciate him willing to take that on.
For a 3-year term of office on the Community Development Advisory Board, Ms. Feyerabend votes for Mr. Moore. Mr. Shoemaker votes for Mr. Moore. Mr. Staten votes for Mr. Moore. Mr. Zandy votes for Mr. Moore. And Ms. Dolan votes for Mr. Moore. Mr. Moore has 5 votes and is appointed to the CDAC for a period ending April 30, 2015.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Next up then, Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Mr. Broughton, if you'll tell us about that.
Yep, this is, we also have one position to fill on the Bristol Housing and Redevelopment Authority, and as the council knows, this is a separate public corporation that operates under Tennessee code authorities. There's a 5-person board. Again, we're seeking 1 person this year, and basically it operates under the statute, rules and regs, and policies that are established by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. The position is for a 5-year term. 1 candidate has submitted the necessary paperwork by the deadline, and that is John Huddleston.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton.
Mr. Mayor, a couple of qualified citizens have approached me that they missed the deadline for applying for this position, and they asked for me to bring it to the council if we can table the voting till their application gets in. I don't know what's the proper procedure, but I just want to bring the request to the council's attention.
Mr. Zandy, would you like to put that in the form of a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to table the voting for this seat till we get the proper application in for the citizens who have missed it, unfortunately, missed the deadline.
I'll second it.
Thank you. We've got a motion and a second. Thank you, Mr. Zandy and Vice Mayor State. You know, a lot of times we sometimes we don't even have candidates apply for positions. Frequently, we only have one person. As many people as we can get involved, I want to get involved. Anyone else want to weigh in on this?
I'll just say the Housing Authority, a lot of our boards are pretty demanding or for what you need to learn about, what you need to know, et cetera. And I think Housing Authority, for me, is one of the tough ones for a lot of acronyms, a lot of different programs, a lot of different things you have to learn about. So I think it's important that we try to match the best people with the right board. So, and Housing Authority being one of those that's pretty challenging to do that.
I'll just say, let's make sure we get all of our applications in here before next meeting. And with that, Terry, I think we're ready to vote on.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah.
with permission of the council, may I suggest that rather than a tabling motion, that if the sentiment of the council is just not to act this evening, that be the action, just not to act this evening, because the tabling motion creates a process that's a little cumbersome to pull it off the table at a future meeting. As a practice, we have not tabled anything in many years here, and I would suggest it's easier if if the sentiment is not to act tonight, then let's just move on to the next appointment with the understanding that we're going to re-advertise and bring this back for consideration at the June meeting, but recall that we do not typically act at the June meeting, which means it could be July unless you vary that policy that's been established as well.
I thought we acted the June meeting, not the July meeting.
No, we don't act at the June meeting.
Okay.
And the reason is because.
In election years, it makes a difference.
Exactly. All right, then I guess the most comfortable thing to do then, is everybody comfortable that we just do not act on this particular one?
Do they
Yes,
need
do we have to withdraw the motion?
and second, yeah.
Mr. Zand?
I will withdraw my motion, Your Honor.
And second?
Yes.
And Jack, we just do nothing now.
It's just unanimous consent if everybody nods their head and says that's fine.
Everybody nod your head, okay. All right.
And then could we also have, if it's agreeable to the group, let's just have a waiver of that practice to not consider any appointments at the June meeting, given this one is unusual because we've delayed it purposely from this evening. Is that also acceptable?
Everybody's comfortable with that, and it's not an election year anyway for us, so.
Right.
Okay, all right, so we're comfortable getting this on the agenda then next time as the only one. And you said that was going to be easier?
It was.
This was easier, okay, all right.
It's the next part that's hard. This part's easy.
All right, then. Next up, then, is Sullivan County Board of Equalization. Mr. Broughton, tell us about that.
We have one final appointment for consideration this evening. That's for a two-year term of office on the Sullivan County Board of Equalization. And that board is, the city of Bristol has a seat on, it's a county board that supports the Sullivan County Property Assessor's Office. By statute, you have the ability to appoint one person to the board, and the only person that's submitted interest for consideration is Clarence Wilkerson.
How often do they meet? Just out of curiosity.
They meet as often as they need to.
That's a great answer.
Typically, it's 3, 4, or 5 meetings.
A year?
Yeah, they have to go to training in the month of May, and then they sit as an appeals board typically in late May and June, is my understanding.
Cool.
Is there anyone wishes to speak on behalf of Mr. Wilkerson?
Clarence Wilkerson has been serving on this, and he and his wife Becky are great community servants in our community and do a whole lot. And his background, I forget what it is, but I think he brings good stuff to the table for working on this. So.
I'll add the Wilkersons are retired and volunteer everywhere. They're just all over the community. Wonderful job. So, with that, Mr. Broughton, I think we're
Okay.
ready
With
there.
that, the vote for that position, Mr. Staton votes for Mr. Wilkerson, Ms. Dolan votes for Mr. Wilkerson, Mr. Zandy votes for Mr. Wilkerson, Ms. Feyerabend votes for Mr. Wilkerson, and Mr. Shoemaker also votes for Clarence Wilkerson, who is reappointed to a two-year term of office on the Sullivan County Board of Equalization.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Up next on the agenda, ordinances and resolutions. We got first reading of new ordinances. Mr. Broughton, tell us about ordinance 12-3.
Ordinance number 12-3 is an ordinance amending ordinance number 0714 relating to the salaries of city council. Back in 2007, an action was taken by city council to cause for the salaries of members of city council to adjust based on a formula using the consumer price index, which is currently in existence. This amendment will adjust that policy to provide that the adjustment that will be made for city council members effective after June 30th of this summer will not exceed the percentage that is given to all employees in the as a general wage adjustment in the same fiscal year. So what this amendment will do is provide that members of council's wage adjustment yearly will never be greater than what the city council sets as the general wage adjustment for all other city employees. This year it happens to have an impact without passage of this ordinance and putting into effect, the council could have expected a 3.4% increase in their annual salary. With the change and with the budget that's in the process of being adopted, the increase will be 2% rather than the 3.4% that otherwise will take place absent approval of this ordinance.
All right, thank you, Mr. Broughton. Is there anyone in attendance this evening who wish to speak to City Council about this particular matter? Anyone wish to speak to council on this issue? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of council?
So moved.
Second.
Joel, thank you. And Ben for the second. Now, is there additional discussion by council?
I just think it's appropriate for us to follow the city employees' increase. They worked full-time, they worked very hard. We're part-time employees, and we don't deserve more than they do. So.
Thank you, Ben. Anybody else want to weigh in?
I don't know where we came up with the first one anyway, so this makes sense.
All right, I'm going to give a little bit of a history lesson here. A few years ago, the city council looked at the fact that Sullivan County had commissioners had an increase, and Bristol, Virginia had an increase, and we were considerably less than other elected officials around us. And so we had more than 25 years since the city council had any increase in the stipend that we get. So we, in a work session, voted that we needed to probably do something to correct that situation. And we decided, well, the easiest thing is just vote, just kind of follow the consumer price index, and as things gradually creep up, this gradually creeps up, and then we wouldn't have to fool with it again. And that seemed to make sense. The state of Tennessee will not allow elected officials to increase their salary or their pay during the time that they're serving. It has to be after the next election. And we decided that half their council members were up for election, but the other half were not, so we couldn't increase half of it. So we went through 2 more elections and thinking, well, we'll just wait this out. And then it comes to pass finally after a couple elections. And then in our work session, just the other week, we saw that it was going to be 3.4%. The council felt like, gosh, we shouldn't get more of a raise than anybody else working for the city, even though we're the lowest paid members of the city. We are part-time. And so that's how all of this came about, and it seems to just get more confusing when we're trying to make it easy. But anyway, 2% is what it is, and we're sticking to it. We'll not ever get an increase more than what the other city employees are getting, and that's only fair. With that said, Ms. Terry, I think we're ready for the vote.
Vice Mayor Staten?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker? Baker?
Yes.
Councilman Zandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fierstein?
Yes.
Can I say something, David?
Yeah, Joe.
That's probably the first time you'll see a government official vote not to get a raise, not to get more money.
Well, you know what, it just seemed like it was a good idea at the time, and then it's never as easy as you think it's gonna be. But anyway, I think we're all right. Anybody that thinks for a second you will do this job for the money is not there. Next up, ordinance 12-4. Ms. Broughton, tell us about the next ordinance.
Let me read the title. Ordinance number 12-4 is an ordinance to abandon an unnamed and unopened public right-of-way across properties at 2037 and 2041 Highway 421. This is first reading of an ordinance that, as the title describes, abandons a right-of-way that none of us knew that even existed. It's located between Carolina Avenue and Highway 421. Sherry, maybe you can bring it up so we can help bring it in context. The area that we're talking about is that's Highway 421 there, that runs basically top to bottom on the left-hand side of the screen. And the white building there inside the blue circle at 10 o'clock, that's the CenturyLink telephone switching station. So now you know where we are. Maybe the next slide will bring it in a little tighter. The telephone switching station, again, at 2037, there's a subdivision of property that's occurred, and in the process of that subdivision, or in the process of getting that property subdivided, it was discovered that an unopened right-of-way, unimproved unopened right-of-way existed, and that's depicted there for the most part in the purple, which is the right-of-way that is being proposed to be abandoned. It's 20 feet wide. As I said, it's never been opened, it's never been used, but the purple part runs there diagonally across that rectangular big yellow box, and then it hangs, goes 90 degrees to the right side of the screen. I guess that's a dark blue. That part is also a part of the right-of-way that's being abandoned, but the part there in the darker blue is the area where the city will be retaining easements, and those easements that are being retained are for stormwater and utilities. So basically what we have is a situation where in the subdivision of property, the right-of-way was discovered. It has no public use to the city going forward, but for the section described where we believe we need to retain easements. But the abandonment of the rest of it makes sense, and that was reviewed with the Planning Commission at their last meeting when they looked at it and agreed that, and recommended to you that you move forward with the abandonment of the described area. It's, I'll try to answer any other questions you may have, but it's one of those things where you don't sometimes know until somebody looks carefully, and then all of a sudden you realize it. But in this case, the fact it's never been opened, never been used, and we cannot conceive that it would have any public use going forward, it makes sense to abandon it as recommended.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Is there any question or clarification needed from staff on this? Is there anyone in attendance then wish to speak to City Council on this particular matter? Seeing none, what's the pleasure of council?
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, thank you, Margaret and Ben. We have a motion and a second. Any additional discussion? Who's the city planner detective that found that, Sherry? A surveyor just found that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think we're ready for the vote, Terry.
Vice Mayor State?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Councilman Zandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fierstein?
Yes.
All right, moving on, ordinance 12-5. Mr. Broughton, tell us about that.
Ordinance number 12-5 is an ordinance to amend the appropriation of funds and budget for the fiscal year July 1, 2011 through June 30th, 2012. This is a routine event that occurs every year in the life of a municipality, where we go back towards the end of the fiscal year that we're closing out, and of course that closes out on June 30th, and look to see what we thought our spending needs would be in advance of the start of the fiscal year on July 1st. This year, both Tara Music, our finance director, and Becky over at the Bristol City School System looks at each of the funds that they're responsible for to see if any additional funding needs came up during the year requiring the adjustment of the appropriation ordinance. And this year there were 5 funds that have been identified for increased appropriations to meet the needs of each of those funds this year. The funds that the city controls includes the general fund, and there were a couple of drivers on that, the hailstorms of the costs involved with the hailstorms the past year impacted our spending this year. We had additional hardware and software support for our information technology system, the council will recall. But the big increase affecting the appropriation requirements in our general fund is the transfer of the H.B. King building to the Industrial Development Board. So we need there's an adjustment of $579,757 for the general fund. The Community Development Block Grant Fund, again, this is one of the funds that the city controls directly. That increases to recognize a grant, emergency shelter grant, that wasn't originally included in the appropriation. The Solid Waste Fund budget is proposed for a $33,000 increase. That fund may be able to make it just fine with its existing appropriations, but in the event fuel costs increase here in the last couple of months, it just provides a little bit of flex so that the spending stays below the original appropriation. And the Capital Project Fund facilities, there were a couple of projects that drove the appropriation needs higher there by almost $900,000. One is the fast track grants that we acquired from the state, both for the Seaman project and for the Sprint project. And the other was the improvements at Rotary Field, the cost of that project, and the last piece of it, principally field lighting, drove additional funding needs in that fund. All of these needs were identified as the 2013 budget was put together, and so nothing should affect where we believe we are based on our modeling and where we're proposing to go in our 2013 budget. None of this will have an impact on any of that financial planning, and this is recommended to you.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Any clarification needed by my council? Hearing none, is there anyone in attendance this evening wish to address the City Council on this particular matter? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Motion to move forward.
Second.
Thank you, Ben and Margaret. Got a motion and a second. Any additional discussion by council? Ms. Terry, I think we're ready for the vote.
Vice Mayor Staten?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Councilman Zandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Feierabend?
Yes.
All right, thank you. And ordinance 12-6, last ordinance this evening. Mr. Broughton, tell us about
Ordinance
it.
number 12-6 is an ordinance to establish the property tax rate, adopt the budget, and appropriate funds for the fiscal year July 1, 2012 through June 30th, 2013. The last action that you acted upon was to adjust appropriations for the year we're closing out. This item is to set the appropriations and adopt the budget, and of course set the tax rate for the year fiscal 2013, which starts on July 1st of this summer. The tax rate that is proposed this year remains at $2.19 per $100 of assessed valuation, which means the tax rate has not changed, will not have changed for 3 consecutive years in a row, and is consistent with our long-term financial modeling and plan as it relates to receipt of revenues through ad valorem taxes. So the 219 rate unchanged again for the 3rd year in a row. For illustrative purposes, somebody who has a house that has a market value of $100,000, well, that person will pay to the city this next year $547 in city taxes, which we all believe is a great value for the services that are received. So that's the first part of what this ordinance does, sets the tax rate at $2.19. Second part is to adopt the budget. The City Council spent a good part of a Tuesday last month reviewing the proposed budget, and the budget discussion resulted in a few modifications to the draft that came to you, and so what you have before you tonight is to adopt a city budget for 2013 that's slightly under $110 million, which is a 25% above last year, and I'll explain why that number is high. When you look at the spending needs between the city side, or which we call the municipal side, and the city schools, you can see the city side's $70.5 million of that total, and the schools are about $39.5 million of that total. Next slide, Sherry. The number, though, is a little misleading, that 25% increase when looking at it this year versus last year. And the reason that that number is artificially high is because of a placeholder amount that was placed in the budget and in the appropriation ordinance for a project under authority of Chapter 420 project under authority of Tennessee Code. So if you back that, and it's $25 million, it's a placeholder amount that was put in there just to have something in our budget in the event something happens with a project that could require some city support, and that support would be primarily through the IDB. But if you look at it, if you wanted an apples-to-apples comparison between this year's budget, absent that placeholder, and last year's budget, what you'll find is this year's budget is about $2.5 million lower. That's the combined city and schools budget, and that's about 2.8%. So if you look at really true spending needs, this budget's less than last year by $2.5 million. And the reduction primarily between this year and last year, of course, there's a lot of money in and out between all the funds, and you're hiring some and lowering others. But if you really wanted to sum it up to one reason is this budget lower than last year, the reason is reduced capital project spending for the schools. Last year, we were finishing up the schools were finishing up the energy conservation project that's in the city school system, and that project was completed. That money rolled through our budget, and with that project completed and no additional major capital projects occurring on either the city or school sides, the net of all that is a reduction this year compared to last. Finally, the budget has been adjusted. That total amount of $109 million was adjusted as discussed, and the consensus sentiment of council, which included additional monies for the Paramount Center, for the United Way, and then the reduction in the council salaries as we just looked at a minute ago. And the budget also included 2 additional objectives that came up in the work session for our goals program, one involving looking at strategic thinking, planning for the farmers market operation, and the second was a youth and government program of some type. So with that, the development of the budget is clearly the most time involved process the city staff does each and every year. It involves every department. The finance department, under the direction of Tara Music, takes primary responsibility for putting it all together, developing a sound work plan, and providing quality management information, and giving the staff something to work with, and hopefully the council a comfort that we're going to move forward, be fiscally responsible in the next year, and accomplish a great deal with limited resources we have. Be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Any clarification needed by council? Any additional questions about what we worked all day long on the other week? Hearing none, is there anyone in attendance this evening wish to speak to council about this particular issue? Anyone wish to address the council on this matter? Hearing none, what's the pleasure of council?
Motion to move forward?
Second.
All right, we got a first there, Ben, and Joel, the second. Thank you. Motion and a second. Any additional discussion by council?
Just want to thank Tara and Mr. Broughton for putting this budget together. They really worked hard, and they did the due diligence, so great job. Thank you.
And I could reiterate that. Also, I just wanted to appreciate what we've done for the last several years of looking at raising taxes every 4 years. And that's been a habit, so it's something that we, as city council people, we don't like to do, but it helps us to maintain our services and be able to keep up with what we're able to provide by considering that on a regular basis. And with costs going up, we can't provide the same kind of services without occasionally taking a hard look at our revenue from taxes. At the work session, I expressed my concern about Vance, and I'll just express that again, that we're looking toward our schools, with our school system, to improve Vance, either with a new building or total redo, and it is desperate. It was desperate, 3 years ago when we did Fairmount. It's still desperate, and we look hard at the capacity of our citizens for raising taxes. So I'm still thinking we need to take a hard look at that to be sure that we're good this year with looking at what happens next year. So, and knowing that we've got to have the best education for our kids to be able to compete and be successful, whether they stay here or go elsewhere. Education is one of the most important things we do as a city council, as a city. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
Anyone else? Thank you, Margaret. Terry, I think we're ready for the vote.
Vice Mayor Staten?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Councilman Sandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fryerson?
Yes.
We don't have any ordinance on second reading this evening. We do have one resolution, Resolution 12-27. Mr. Brock.
Resolution number 12-27 is a resolution confirming the appointment of the student member to the Parks and Recreation Commission. As was evidenced tonight, when we have members for consideration, our various boards and commissions, we have a public recognition of the candidates and a public acknowledgement of the person selected. We have a little bit of an unusual situation with regard to the Parks and Recreation Commission, where one member of that board is a student member selected by the principal of Tennessee High School. So by pulling this out in this fashion, the council and the community can hear the name Bethany Russell. Bethany has been recommended by Dr. Mary Rouse to serve a second year, her senior year, on the Park and Recreation Commission as the student member. And so by pulling it out, not putting it on the consent agenda, and having the council confirm this through a singular vote, Ms. Russell's name is out there for everybody to understand. She's giving her time to our community, just like the adult members that were appointed this evening.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Is there anybody like to put that in the form of a motion and vote on it?
I'll move to approve accept Ms. Russell's nomination.
Thank you, Margaret.
I'll second.
And thank you, Michelle. We've got a motion and a second. Any discussion by council?
I have a question. I know I should know the answer, but I can't remember. Is it a voting position?
No.
I serve on the library board, and a few years ago, we have two youth members on the library board, which is a joint board. So we have one from Bristol, Virginia, and one from Bristol, Tennessee. And we made them voting members several years ago. Also, with my work with children and youth, in reading about youth on board, it's also not a bad idea to have two youth, so you have succession and also they have a little bit of company. So if it's possible for us to look at those two things, whether we could add another youth, also whether they might be able to be voting members, I would think that would be something good to look at. Do y'all agree?
We agree.
Well, we'll do it a little more formally and structured. I'll put that on one of our work sessions when we've got
And
a
it's to
little
look at it, to see. I don't even know in Tennessee if it's legal to have youth voters, so.
We'll give you something to chew on when
That
we
sounds
can give you
great.
something to address.
Anybody else? What we're actually voting on is her appointment.
Right.
So Terry, I think we're ready for the vote.
Vice Mayor State?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Councilman Sandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fierova?
Yes.
Thank you, Terry. Last up then, consent agenda. Mr. Broughton, if you would read us that consent agenda.
I'd be happy to. The consent agenda includes 13 items this evening, and let me walk through by city charter requirement. The title of each of those is properly read, and that includes the minutes of the April 3rd council meeting, the minutes of the April 17th work session, includes Resolution 1228 authorizing the submittal of an application for highway safety grant funds. It includes Resolution 1229 approving a fast-track infrastructure grant agreement with the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development for assistance with the Sprint Telecenters project. Includes Resolution 12-30 awarding bids for wastewater treatment plant recoating projects, and includes Resolution 1231 awarding bid for the purchase of refuse containers. Includes Resolution 1232 authorizing approval of the Tri-Cities Regional Airport Foreign Trade Zone financial contribution. Includes Resolution 12-33 awarding bid for the painting of a water tank. Includes Resolution 12-34 awarding a bid for the installation of roof fans at the wastewater treatment plant. Includes Resolution 12-35 authorizing the purchase of outdoor play instruments. Includes Resolution 12-36 adopting a CDBG action plan and approving the submittal of a grant application to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development for CDBG grant funding. Includes Resolution 12-37 approving an agreement with the First Tennessee Development District for program administration for the Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia Home Consortium, and includes Resolution 12-38 approving the renewal of agreements with members of the Northeast Tennessee, Southwest Virginia Home Consortium.
Thank you, Mr. Broughton. Is there any member of council wish to pull any of these items off for discussion? Hearing none, is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Joel, thank you. And Ben for the second. With the consent agenda, we vote these as a block without discussion, and if there's any member of council wishes to pull any of these off, we do so, but we have not. So, Terry, we are ready for the vote.
Vice Mayor State?
Yes.
Mayor Shoemaker?
Yes.
Councilman Sandy?
Yes.
Councilwoman Dolan?
Yes.
Councilwoman Fierova?
Yes.
With that said, this closes our regular meeting or finish up the agenda. Mr. Broughton, do you have any words of wisdom for us this evening?
Well, I don't know if they're words of wisdom, but I will make an announcement that you'll all be interested in, as will others who enjoy our farmers market. And that's the first farmers market day is this Saturday. First Saturday in May is when the market opens. The market will open at 8 o'clock and runs till noon, I guess noon or so. So come on out and visit your old friends that have been with us in the past, and I think we're going to have some new vendors this year as well. So we expect to have a great market season, and again, Saturday is the first day.
Ms. Bryden, Joe, since you serve on the Farmers Market Board, if you want to dovetail in on that one?
I think Jeff said it all.
All right, good deal. What else, Mr. Bryden?
That's all. That's all I have. I'll be happy answering questions if you have any about any other matter.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bryden. We've got a couple folks in attendance. Becky Adams from the school system, I'm going to guess that Gary Lilly sent you tonight, just in case Margaret needs an update on city schools. We appreciate you coming.
Oh, you're welcome. And Dr. Lilly is actually at a band concert this evening, so he apologizes for not being here, but he couldn't quite be in two places at one time. Number one, I do want to thank you for all your support, for both from our Board of Education, Dr. Lilly, and our teachers and students. As you know, we finished our strategic planning recently, an update on that. We've also finished TCAPS last week, so all our elementary and middle school students were involved with that. We're currently doing end-of-course testing, and so hopefully we'll have a lot of that as we finish up over the next few weeks. So we have a lot of spring activities that we'd love for you to join us if you can, between sports and musical concerts. We'll have class night next Friday night on May the 11th, with graduation at the high school on Saturday, May the 19th. So if you can come, we would love to have you there. We'll also have various graduations between kindergarten, 6th grade, middle school, etc., that if you can join us, we would love to have you there. As we've talked, it has been a very difficult budget year, and we do appreciate the $4 million contribution that we get from the city towards our general purpose budget. As we've talked to Margaret, we do have a funding cliff that we're kind of experiencing with stimulus funding ending. We also have some education funds that's ending, so that's impacting us and has made our budget very difficult. We're trying to look at a number of sources to try to see what we can do without impacting student performance and direct student achievement. We have been impacted not only this year, but in future years to come because of the decision that Sullivan County made when they did their property tax allocation that's impacting us almost $250,000 last year, this year, and many years into the future where they have changed what they allocated to the school system. There's been some discussion in the Times News related to Kingsport City Schools, but it's also impacting us. We do have some one-time capital expenses that we're trying to do. We appreciate the ability that we've had to do this energy projects. We're still finishing that up. We appreciate the central project. One of the other things that's hitting us this year is, and this hasn't been final because the state's still working and just, I think, passed their budget this week, is the state's now saying that Sullivan County is in a better financial position to support school systems. So when they look at that, they've looked at our fiscal indexes and have said that we are in better position. So one of the things that's happening with our state funding is it could possibly be reduced $200,000 because of that. So just kind of wanted to let you know that. And it's kind of one of those things that the state mandates some things with some salary increases, but yet they don't fund it all. So just kind of a couple bullet points related to our budget. We're still looking at all possibilities that we might be able to do to try to reduce our deficit. The board will be approving that in May, and then if we have any changes, we'll bring those to you on second reading. But we do appreciate the support. We are so appreciative of all the improvements we've been able to make at the schools and the fields that we'll have at Central and the softball project. I just love driving by there to see that coming up and hopefully get a lot of those things completed this spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. We also have Malin Luttrell here with Bristol Baseball. Any updates you want to give us this evening?
Oh,
I kind of.
Are we going to World Series?
You may be here for a reason.
World Series.
Well, actually, I just kind of just enjoy the pleasure of listening to everything that's going on in Bristol. Like many other organizations, we too are also struggling financially. Not struggling financially, but we're getting additional burdens put on us by Major League and Minor League Baseball. We have a major field renovation project that we're facing that has to be done, or Bristol will lose baseball. So we've been in direct contact with Minor League Baseball. We had representatives in last week with them, reviewing the conditions of the field, trying to put action plans together. They are mandating that we have a professional sports turf manager on staff to take care of those field projects. With that, that's nothing we've ever had in the budget. It's very expensive, but we just need everyone's support in coming out, to watch the games so we can get some, monies from ticket revenue. And, we're reaching out to other organizations within the city, try to, help out. Again, we always present ourselves as Bristol baseball, even though the stadium is in Bristol, Virginia. We are Bristol baseball. So thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Other council members, comments?
Go ahead, Ms. Fire. I'll be last.
You'll be last. Thank you. I've got several things just to mention. First is meeting some of the needs in our community. Just wanted to say that there's been talk of a ministry mall and in an old factory next to First Baptist Church. And the Bristol Food Bank and Higher Faith Outreach Clothing Closet have opened up in that building. It's not renovated to the standards that they had hoped, but it's open, operating, so people are looking to find those services in a different location, and it's much better than what it's been in the past. Also, I wanted to thank the community. I was out of town last week, but there was 2 events for Family Promise of Bristol, and it's getting very close, and it is faiths and congregations helping families with children who are homeless, and so we're hoping to start that program. Interfaith Hospitality Network is the program sometime in the very near future. It's finally getting there. I'm also sorry that I missed the Mayor's Award. Understand it went well and that the speaker was fantastic and the crowds were really good. So really appreciate that and want to extend my congratulations to the winners, to Mimi Kind, who I just think it's such a gift that she and Mr. Lockett are in our downtown where all their Tennessee high school students can come visit them and keep learning how to do art. And Jim White, who's given a lot of his life to the food pantry and other things in our community. And then also Jerry Goodpasture, who I've been able to work with in downtown projects and Believe in Bristol. And Jerry gets down and dirty and gets her hands dirty and just works really hard. So really glad to see those folks recognized. Want to also say today I went to ribbon cutting for Ecological Energy Systems, and that's the group that's partnering with us for several solar projects. And I understand that the panels are up at our demolition landfill, and pretty exciting to have some energy projects going on with solar things and moving into the future and helping to demonstrate what are good ideas to help us. And then lastly, I'll just say, also this month we had town hall meetings on underage drinking. There was one on the 19th at Tennessee High, one at Virginia High on the 23rd. And just reminding that in this season we've gotten through a couple of proms, which are good, and sounds like they went really well. Her Tennessee Highs was great. But this is also time for graduation, also time where kids spend a lot of time at the lake, etc. But just for all of us to be having conversations with our kids about the importance of paying attention to alcohol consumption, also social hosting that's illegal. So everything in moderation, and for underage drinkers, not. So That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Margaret. Who's next? Ben?
Pretty good.
Well, we are still working on the Healthy Community Fair downtown. Hopefully, when we have a date, we can make an announcement on that. And also, one thing that when we did the tour of schools, Tennessee High was in real need of renovation, so I'd like to keep that on the radar and let us not forget, as well as the Vance School that Ms. Fire-Robin talked about. I'd like to put that on the agenda of discussion for 2013 and 14, hopefully. And I had a personal tour of our police department by the chief, and I pretty got a good taste of what they do every day. And I know there were incidences and citizens here today talking about some of the issues, but I want to applaud you for all the things that you do, and your department does a great job, and I want to thank you for all your hard work. We will have issues, and we will deal with the issues, but let's not forget how hard you and your team work at it in this city. So I want to thank you for that.
Thank you, Ben. Was that a voluntary tour?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was. He didn't handcuff me. No.
Just checking. You went on your own free will. Michelle, did you have anything? I'm good. Joe?
I'm good.
All right. I've got just a couple things. You know, it's springtime, the birds are tweeting, the flowers are blooming, and there is stuff going on downtown. First night of live music, Tuesdays and Thursdays, down on the Sertan stage at the Country Music Mural on State Street. So much stuff going on with the farmers market opening up this week, and Border Bash, the first Border Bash of the season. It's Friday night. It's got some live music, great entertainment down on State Street. So much going on downtown. Malin, you reminded me that, you know, we live in such a unique community. Our baseball field is in Bristol, Virginia. Our library is in Bristol, Virginia. Our train station is in Bristol, Virginia. Our theater is in Bristol, Tennessee. Our farmers market is in Bristol, Tennessee. Our chamber is in Bristol, Tennessee. Rhythm and Roots is in Tennessee, but they're building a museum in Virginia. All spread out. Everything's good. Got Bristol, Virginia elections going on right now on the Virginia side. Wish everyone well. For candidates, 2 newcomers and 2 incumbents. I wish them all well, that they step up to the plate and be willing to serve their community. It's sometimes it's kind of a thankless job, but we wish them well, our sister city there. And last, Jack Spurgeon, suit and tie, man, that looks good. I'm so impressed. I feel like I must mention it. Very nice. With that, folks, thank you all for coming. I appreciate those of you who lasted out the entire council meeting. And with that, we are adjourned.